So, a few days ago, the Nezha Rework workshop was unleashed onto the forums, with wide and wild praise, some saying it's very good, some saying it's perfect, others saying it brings a lot of buffs and no nerfs. Well, I don't agree with any of these views. In my eyes, Nezha 2.0 will be a lesser version of the original. So let's talk about why. I'm Deuce, and thanks in advance for watching. First of all, some context. According to stats provided by Digital Extremes, Nezha is one of the least used Warframes. In the period between August 8 and August 15, 2018, the frame was used by a 0.66% of the game's player population on PC, accounting only those that used the frame maxed, i.e. at rank 30. This ranks Nezha number 4 among the top 10 least used Warframes, being the number 1 the least used of them all. So it is fair to assume that not many players know Nezha very well, but you don't need to in order to understand how his kit works, since this is one of the most streamlined frames in terms of functionality. Personally, I'm not amongst that 0.66% of players that use Nezha very much. But unlike the majority of players that sung praise at his rework, I see some things that really worry me, to the point where I believe that if implemented as stated, it will represent a substantial nerf. The first notable changes will come to Nezha's health and shields. The first one will go from 225 default to 375, and the second one from 225 to 150, also at default values. These are very positive changes. Shields in Warframe, at least their usage by players, lack value when compared to health, because its resistance is set. On the other hand, health is affected by the damage reduction index provided by armor, so extending this surface will make your Warframe more tanky regardless, even when that extension is done at the expense of shields. And especially when said frames have higher armor values and you're using arcanes such as Guardian. Firewalker will no longer be an ability that consumes energy over time. It will be changed to one with a set duration. In addition, the casting animation will be turned into one that does not limit movement speed. Both of these changes are very good, especially the first one. Energy draining abilities are oftentimes the ones that tax our energy reserves the most, while duration-based abilities represent the complete opposite. Not to mention that the main reason many use max efficiency Nezha is due to the fact that Firewalker needs it to function properly. Of course, this has a very substantial caveat, and that is how much duration could be assigned as a default value. If you take a closer look to the UI displayed in the forum example, it appears that the default duration value is set to 40 seconds or so. That's considering that the Warframe displayed has not been modded. Even still, if that's not the absolute maximum you can reach, then it's okay. Firewalker works at its best when you can leave it on for extended periods of time. There is no risk in giving it an extended duration simply because you need to move around quite a bit to make something useful out of it. This is not a set and forget or AFK friendly ability. Blazing Chakram will see its casting speed increased, also movement restrictions will be eliminated. Enemies hit by the disc will be marked with a small halo of fire. Said mark will last a certain amount of time affected by mods, greatly increasing the damage they take from all sources. The last part was a direct quote from the workshop. When marked enemies die, they will have a chance of dropping energy orbs and will always drop health orbs, replacing the AoE healing pulse that Nezha currently has. The amount of enemies that a single chakram can hit will also be increased and the homing system will be improved. A charged throw will be added, but instead of homing in on enemies, this mechanic will make the chakram travel in a straight line, dealing more damage to enemies in its path. Lastly, teleporting to the chakram while using Firewalker will no longer deactivate the latter. Now, I have several problems with these changes. First and foremost, we don't know how much that marking mechanic is going to last. If its duration is less than 10 seconds default, then it's a big no. Second, we don't know how many enemies can the chakram hit with a single throw, or whether or not that number can be increased using mods. Third, we don't know how greatly the damage on a marked enemy is going to be increased. Fourth, we don't know what is the energy orb drop chance, and finally, replacing the healing pulse for health orbs is not just a nerf, it's almost theft. Allow me to elaborate. As of right now, at default value, the healing pulse Blazing Chakram produces heals for 225 health. 225. A health orb does so for only 25. Run the numbers and you will realize this health orb is almost 10 times weaker than the pulse. The problem of the pulse is not its ability to heal, but its range. At 8 meters default, you need to be very close to the enemy when that pulse is triggered. Instead of making this heal pulse an affinity range type of heal like Trinity's Blessing, they downgrade it almost 10 times and make it a pickup. The reasoning behind this change is that, and I quote, the current radial heal is invisible and very small, usually only benefiting players in melee range. Most players don't even know it's there. Health orbs make the result more visible while introducing other mod synergies. End quote. By these mod synergies, they are presumably referring to equilibrium and health conversion, with me throwing Arcane Pulse in the mix. But why would you need equilibrium on a Warframe that already spawns energy orbs? Arcane Pulse is just a watered-down version of Nezha's current pulse with an increased range. And health conversion is a gimmick that only functions effectively on the Necros farming tank build, because you control the entirety of the synergy loop, from health loss to health orb generation, not to mention it costs no energy. Nezha's Rework will only control one part of the loop, the health orb generation, and it will cost energy to do that, further discouraging players to go for health conversion. Isn't it better to keep the current healing pulse, increasing its default range and making it visible, I don't know, with a big green particle effect or something? To top it all off, nothing in this rework references Blazing Chakram's biggest problem, and that is its damage. Yes, the charged throw will deal more, and marked enemies will be susceptible to more too, but we don't know how much more. Right now, the main problem of the Chakram is its damage, which is poor to say the least. Any change that doesn't address this is simply incomplete. My suggestion has always been to turn the Chakram into an ability affected by melee mods, much in the vein of Korra's Whip, Atlas's Punches, or Gara's first ability. Warding Halo will have a personalized damage tracker, much in the vein of Siren's Spores or Nidus' Stacks, indicating how much damage absorption we have. This will be expressed in numbers akin to regular damage, not in a percentage. Instead of invulnerability, Warding Halo will give us a 90% damage reduction, but it will still prevent status effects. However, the damage absorption phase of the ability will still have invulnerability attached to it, as well as an increased casting speed. Lastly, when Warding Halo's health is depleted, it will produce an AoE heat proc, providing the player a second invulnerability period, in which the ability can be casted back up. I really can't stress how bad I think this 90% damage reduction change is going to be. In all the other cases in which this mechanic has been introduced, the ability lasts for a set period of time, such as Gara's Splinter Storm. But in Nezha's case, that damage reduction's duration will last depending on the damage received, meaning that the ability will disappear when it's needed the most. Even the current Nezha suffers from this issue, especially in missions such as Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, where enemy density is high and maneuvering spaces are relatively small. In turn, this results in a constant recast cycle, which heavily taxes your energy. Not to mention that this approach makes the Warframe's main survivability mechanic something very unreliable. Some will argue that this allows Nezha to use arcanes that trigger on damage received, and mods such as Rage or Hunter Adrenaline. But the only arcane in this category worth using is Arcane Avenger, which is good and all but also rare. Defensive arcanes that fill this category, such as Guardian, are out of the picture, since it doesn't matter how much armor they give, they are nowhere near as good as being invincible. And a frame that can generate energy orbs because of Blazing Chakram is one that doesn't need an energy recovery mod. I mean, that's the idea behind the blue orb generation mechanic to begin with. So I don't see how losing the current Warding Halo's invulnerability is good. The idea behind this change is that flat invincibility makes players shy away from using Nezha's CC, since, and I quote, Firewalker and Divine Spears offer great area/crowd control. End quote. This assertion is wrong, in my opinion. Nezha's CC isn't great, it's decent, at best. Also, Warding Halo doesn't last forever. It has its own health, so the best option is to use it in conjunction with the frame's other tools, in order to prevent it from depleting. In the pursuit of separating Nezha from Rhino, this ability will be transformed into a watered-down version of Gara's Splinter Storm, a more expensive version, by the way. If the idea is to synergize Blazing Chakram with Warding Halo, why not add a mechanic that allows the first one to replenish the second one, based on the amount of damage dealt, while removing the second invincibility stage and keeping Warding Halo's current 100% damage prevention? I mean, how can you logically explain an ability that makes you invincible at the beginning and at the end of its life cycle, but not in between? I know, because of video games, but come on! This new Warding Halo looks like a Frankenstein monster, stitched together by some of the worst aspects of other Warframe's mechanics. And if you're still defending this particular change, ask yourself this: what if Rhino got these changes instead of Nezha? And no, being able to produce red orbs doesn't represent having a healing mechanic. Finally, we arrive at Divine Spears. Its ability will have its casting speed increased, plus hitting an impaled enemy with a Blazing Chakram will spawn a second Chakram that will home in on a nearby enemy. These changes are good, but they don't address the main problem of this ability. You see, the spears are not good crowd control, simply because you can't have them on demand. You cast the ability, and if you want to cast it again, you have to trigger the slam phase and then recast it. Nothing exemplifies this issue better than trying to solo a defense mission with Nezha. Using the spears will stop the initial wave of enemies, but all others that come after and while the ability is active will slip through. If you want to control them, you need to slam first, then recast, which is not only inefficient, it's also clunky. One of the main reasons Nezha is considered a discount Rhino is due to the fact that while one has a CC ability that it can spam on demand, the other has something similar that takes longer to do so, not to mention the need to press the button twice. My idea here is to make the slam mechanic from Divine Spears an optional thing. Holding down the button will slam enemies, but tapping it will recast the spears. Right now you can have only one instance of the ability active, which is not my definition of great crowd control, since that instance works instantly, not over time, or producing a spears field of sorts, where if enemies step on it, they are impaled immediately. This could also be a solution. But to say that Nezha's current CC is very good is simply not true. Good CC is that which can be used on demand, and Divine Spears can't. End of story. In conclusion, not all the changes are bad. The duration-based Firewalker, the energy orbs, and the marking for extra damage mechanics of Blazing Chakram, the AoE effect on Warding Halo, and the increased casting speed of Divine Spears are all awesome additions. And yes, Nezha needs changes, but not just any change. Being able to generate health orbs doesn't turn you into a healer. Blazing Chakram needs to deal more damage. 100% damage reduction is miles better than 90%. It doesn't matter how you look at it, and Divine Spears isn't good crowd control, not in its current state. Overall, these changes will diminish Nezha's survivability when he needs it the most, while adding some synergies that simply don't mesh well together. In the end, the goal of making Nezha more powerful by giving him added team support is not going to be accomplished. I feel that people will use him because his deluxe skin looks cool, but in terms of value to a team, this frame will fall further down. It's better to be a discount Rhino than to be a discount Necros or a discount Gara. For my part, this has been all for now. If you enjoyed the video or you found it interesting, please consider giving it a like. Don't forget to subscribe for more Warframe content and follow me on Twitter to keep up to date with everything. Again, thank you very much for watching. Whatever you are, have an amazing day and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.